Silver Bell Hollow, nestled in a snow-laden valley surrounded by frosted pine forests, was a place straight out of a fairy tale. The town lived and breathed Christmas, with its cobblestone streets perpetually adorned in strings of twinkling lights, evergreen garlands hung from every lamppost, and warm, golden glow emanating from shop windows that displayed festive treasures. At its heart stood a majestic Christmas tree, towering high in the town square, its branches heavy with ornaments that shimmered like stars. Every year, townsfolk and visitors alike gathered here for the annual lighting ceremony, a tradition that marked the official start of the Christmas season. The air was alive with laughter, the jingling of sleigh bells, and the sweet aroma of roasted chestnuts and spiced cider. At the edge of this enchanting town, tucked away at the end of Hollyberry Lane, was Grandma Clara's cottage. The little house, covered in ivy and dusted with snow, seemed to exude warmth, even on the coldest days. Smoke curled lazily from the stone chimney, carrying with it the scent of Clara's famous gingerbread cookies, a treat beloved by all in Silver Bell Hollow. Clara, a kind-hearted and sprightly woman in her 70s, was the unofficial grandmother to the entire town. Her rosy cheeks, framed by silver curls, and her ever-present apron stained with flour and sugar made her a familiar and comforting sight. She was known not only for her baking but also for her knack for storytelling, spinning tales of magical winters and adventurous Christmases that left her listeners spellbound. Clara's biggest fan was her granddaughter, Ellie, a 10-year-old girl with wide, curious eyes and a boundless imagination. Ellie spent most of her afternoons at her grandmother's side, helping roll out cookie dough or hanging shiny ornaments on the cottage's tiny tree. She loved hearing about the Christmas star, a glowing gem of legend said to bring happiness and luck to anyone who found it. According to Clara, the star had once shone over Silver Bell Hollow, guiding lost travelers to safety on a stormy Christmas Eve, but it hadn't been seen for decades. Ellie often wondered aloud if the star was real, and Clara would always respond with a twinkle in her eye. Some stories are as real as you believe them to be. It was on one such snowy afternoon, as Clara was preparing for the annual Christmas fair, that something unusual happened. She was kneading dough in the kitchen, humming a carol, while Ellie sat at the table decorating gingerbread men with icing and candies. Suddenly, there was a loud thump at the door. Now, who could that be in this weather? Clara muttered, wiping her hands on her apron. Ellie followed her to the door, curious as ever. When Clara opened it, she found a small envelope lying on the doorstep. It was made of thick, creamy paper and sealed with a wax emblem shaped like a star. There was no sign of a mailman or delivery person, only the quiet hush of falling snow. Clara picked up the envelope, turning it over in her hands. "What's that, Grandma?" Ellie asked, peeking over her shoulder. "I'm not sure, dear," Clara replied, breaking the seal carefully. Inside was a letter, written in an ornate script with golden ink. It read, "Dear Clara, you are cordially invited to participate in the 75th Annual Christmas Star Hunt, a tradition that celebrates the magic and spirit of the season. The hunt begins at sunrise tomorrow, starting in the town square. All participants will receive clues to guide them on their journey. The finder of the Christmas star will be granted a special wish. Merry Christmas. The Christmas Star Committee." Ellie's eyes widened. "The Christmas star? Grandma, you have to do it." Clara hesitated, the letter trembling slightly in her hands. The star hunt was an old tradition, one she hadn't thought about in years. She remembered how her parents had participated when she was a child, returning home with frost-bitten cheeks and stories of snowy adventures. But now, at her age, could she really manage such a challenge? Ellie tugged at her hand, her excitement contagious. "Please, Grandma, you're always saying Christmas is about magic and believing. This could be our adventure." Clara smiled, her resolve softening. "All right, my little adventurer," she said, ruffling Ellie's hair. "Let's see what this old girl can do." The next morning, Silver Bell Hollow was abuzz with activity. The town square was packed with participants of all ages, bundled in scarves and mittens, eagerly awaiting the start of the hunt. Clara arrived with Ellie by her side, her red woolen cloak and sturdy boots making her look every bit the determined competitor. As the clock struck 8, the mayor stepped onto a platform, holding a small box. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, his voice booming across the square, "let the Christmas star hunt begin." With that, he opened the box, releasing dozens of glittering envelopes into the air, each containing the first clue. Clara caught one and read it aloud to Ellie. "Where the sleigh bells ring and the snowflakes dance, start your journey with a prance." Ellie clapped her hands. "That's easy. It's the ice skating rink." Clara laughed, feeling a spark of adventure ignite within her. Together they set off, unaware that this was just the beginning of a journey far more magical and perilous than they could imagine. As the morning sun peeked over the snow-dusted rooftops of Silver Bell Hollow, Clara and Ellie made their way to the ice skating rink, their breaths visible in the crisp winter air. The rink was a lively scene, children laughing as they slipped and slid on the ice, couples gliding hand in hand, and the sound of sleigh bells jingling in time with a nearby carolers' song. Clara and Ellie approached the wooden booth at the rink's entrance, where a cheerful attendant handed them their next clue. The envelope shimmered faintly in the pale sunlight, its gold lettering as mysterious as the first. Clara opened it carefully, her gloved hands trembling slightly. "Here we go," she said, clearing her throat to read aloud. "In the forest deep where whispers play, the next clue lies at the break of day." Ellie frowned, tilting her head. "The forest? That must mean Evergreen Grove." Clara nodded in agreement, recalling the grove at the edge of town, a favorite spot for families to cut their own Christmas trees. Though the forest was beautiful by day, its shadowy expanse could be eerie, especially as the sun dipped below the horizon. Determined to press on, Clara and Ellie trekked toward the grove, the snow crunching beneath their boots. As they reached the towering pines, Clara's confidence wavered slightly. The trees stretched endlessly, their branches heavy with snow, and the occasional hoot of an owl echoed through the stillness. Ellie clutched Clara's hand tightly, her earlier excitement giving way to nervous anticipation. Together, they followed a winding path deeper into the woods, their eyes scanning for any sign of the next clue. Eventually, they reached a small clearing where a cluster of candy cane markers stood out vividly against the white snow. In the center of the clearing was a hollowed-out tree stump, and inside lay another envelope. Ellie darted forward to grab it, but just as she reached for the clue, a sudden gust of wind swept through the grove, snatching the envelope from her grasp. "No!" Ellie cried, chasing after the fluttering paper. Clara hurried after her, calling her name. The envelope danced higher and higher until it finally landed in the hands of a mysterious figure who emerged from the shadows. The figure was cloaked in a dark, tattered robe, their face obscured by the hood. Clara instinctively stepped in front of Ellie, shielding her. "Excuse me," Clara said, her voice steady despite the unease creeping into her chest. "That belongs to us." The figure said nothing, merely holding out the envelope before disappearing as quickly as they had appeared. Clara hesitated before taking the envelope, her heart racing. Ellie looked up at her grandmother with wide eyes. "Who was that, Grandma?" Clara shook her head. "I don't know, Ellie, but let's move along. We've got a star to find." As they read the clue, it directed them to the clock tower in the center of town. Relieved to return to more familiar surroundings, Clara and Ellie made their way back to Silver Bell Hollow. The streets were still bustling with other participants in the star hunt, and the festive atmosphere helped calm their nerves. When they reached the clock tower, the bell began to chime, its deep, resonant tone signaling the noon hour. A small compartment in the base of the tower slid open, revealing a wrapped package tied with a golden ribbon. Inside the package was a small silver key and a note that read, "The key to your next step lies in what you treasure most." Clara and Ellie exchanged puzzled looks. Treasure most? Ellie mused aloud. Clara thought for a moment before realization dawned. "The cottage," she whispered. "It must be referring to our home." Ellie beamed. "Let's go." They returned to Clara's cottage, now glowing warmly against the snowy backdrop. As they stepped inside, the familiar aroma of gingerbread and cinnamon greeted them, but something felt different. The air seemed heavier, and there was an unnatural chill, as though the warmth of the house was struggling to hold its ground. Clara moved cautiously, searching for any sign of what the clue might be leading them to. Her gaze fell on the fireplace mantel, where an old wooden box sat, a box that had belonged to her late husband. She hadn't opened it in years, but something about the silver key made her think it might fit. With trembling hands, Clara inserted the key into the lock. It turned smoothly, and the lid creaked open to reveal a small, intricately carved ornament in the shape of a star. As soon as Clara touched it, the room filled with a blinding golden light. When the light faded, Clara was gone. Ellie called out frantically, her voice breaking as she searched the cottage for her grandmother. The door to the box was still ajar, but the star ornament had vanished along with Clara. On the floor where she had stood was a final clue written in golden ink: "To find the one you've lost, follow the trail of light." Ellie's heart raced. She didn't know how, but she was determined to save her grandmother. She quickly bundled up, clutching the clue in one hand and her small lantern in the other, and stepped out into the cold night. The snow had begun to fall heavier now, blanketing the town in an eerie quiet. Ellie looked around for any sign of the trail of light mentioned in the clue. Then, just beyond the edge of the forest, she saw it, a faint golden glow weaving through the trees. Ellie stood at the edge of the forest, the faint golden glow beckoning her forward. Her small hands trembled as she tightened her grip on the lantern. The wind whispered through the trees, carrying with it a strange melodic hum, as though the forest itself was alive with some mysterious energy. With a deep breath, Ellie took her first step onto the snowy path, her boots crunching softly as she followed the trail of light. The glow wove through the towering pines, illuminating the way with a gentle shimmer. The deeper Ellie ventured, the more she felt as though she had stepped into another world. The trees seemed taller, their branches arched overhead like the vaulted ceilings of a cathedral. Icicles glistened like crystal chandeliers, and the snow sparkled as though dusted with tiny diamonds. Despite the beauty, there was an undeniable feeling of unease. Shadows danced just beyond the edges of the light, and every so often, Ellie thought she saw movement, something flitting between the trees. "Grandma!" Ellie called, her voice echoing in the stillness. There was no response, only the rustle of the wind. She pressed on, the trail leading her to a clearing where the golden glow seemed to pool like liquid sunshine. In the center of the clearing stood a magnificent ancient tree, its trunk wide enough to rival a house. Its branches stretched high into the sky, and its bark was etched with intricate carvings that glowed faintly. Hanging from the lowest branch was a single ornament in the shape of a star, much like the one Clara had found in the wooden box. Ellie hesitated, her heart pounding as she approached the tree. As she reached for the ornament, a deep voice resonated through the clearing. "Not so fast, little one." Ellie spun around, clutching the lantern tightly. Standing behind her was a peculiar figure, a tall, lanky man with a crooked top hat and a coat that seemed stitched together from shadows. His face was pale, his eyes sharp and glittering like shards of ice. "Who are you?" Ellie demanded, trying to keep her voice steady. The man tipped his hat, a sly smile curling his lips. "You may call me Mr. Frost," he said with a bow. "And you, my brave young adventurer, are meddling in things you don't quite understand." Ellie glared at him, summoning every ounce of courage she had. My grandma is missing, and I'm going to find her." Mr. Frost chuckled, the sound like the crunch of breaking ice. "Oh, I have no doubt about that. But you see, the Christmas star does not take kindly to intruders. It's protected by magic older than you can imagine. To reclaim what has been lost, you must prove yourself worthy." Ellie straightened her shoulders, determination shining in her eyes. "Tell me what I have to do." Mr. Frost's smile widened, and with a snap of his fingers, the clearing transformed. The ground beneath Ellie's feet turned to glittering ice, and the golden glow was replaced by swirling silver mist. 3 paths stretched out before her, each disappearing into the fog. "Choose a path," Mr. Frost said. "But beware, only one will lead you to what you seek. The others will trap you in the forest forever." Ellie's heart sank. She stared at the paths, each identical in appearance. She thought of her grandmother's stories, the lessons hidden in her words. "Trust your instincts, Ellie," Clara had always said. Ellie closed her eyes, taking a deep breath. When she opened them, she stepped onto the middle path, her lantern casting a warm light ahead. The path was treacherous, the ice slick beneath her feet. Strange shapes loomed in the mist, and faint whispers seemed to echo all around her. Ellie focused on the light of her lantern, refusing to let fear take hold. After what felt like hours, the path ended abruptly at a frozen lake. In the center of the lake stood a pedestal, and on it rested another star-shaped ornament. Ellie hesitated, unsure how to reach it. The ice didn't look stable, and one wrong step could send her plunging into the freezing water. She looked around, searching for something to help her. That's when she saw them, tiny, glowing figures flitting through the trees. They looked like fireflies but moved with purpose, their light pulsing gently. "Help me," Ellie whispered. To her amazement, the lights began to gather around her, their glow intensifying. Together, they formed a path across the ice, illuminating the safest route. Ellie followed carefully, her heart hammering with each step. When she reached the pedestal, she picked up the ornament, and the lake erupted in light. The ice beneath her feet turned solid, and the mist cleared, revealing a new path leading back into the forest. Ellie hurried along the path, clutching the ornament tightly. She didn't know how or why, but she felt she was getting closer to her grandmother. The trees began to thin, and she found herself standing before a towering gate made of twisted branches and ice. The ornament in her hand began to glow, and the gate creaked open, revealing a breathtaking sight. Beyond the gate was a small village, unlike any Ellie had ever seen. The houses were made of gingerbread and candy, their roofs dusted with powdered sugar. The streets were paved with peppermint, and fountains of hot chocolate bubbled in the town square. At the center of the village stood a massive Christmas tree, its branches heavy with golden ornaments. Beneath the tree, Clara stood, looking dazed but unharmed. "Grandma!" Ellie cried, running toward her. Clara turned, her face lighting up with relief as she embraced Ellie tightly. "Oh, Ellie, my brave girl," Clara said, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I don't know how I got here. One moment I was in the cottage, and the next—" "It doesn't matter now," Ellie said, holding her grandmother close. "I found you." Before they could say more, Mr. Frost appeared again, his icy smile softer now. "Well done, young one," he said. "You've proven your courage and your heart. The Christmas star shines brighter because of you." He raised his hand, and a dazzling light filled the sky. When it faded, Ellie and Clara found themselves back in their cottage, the warmth of the fire chasing away the lingering chill of the forest. In Clara's hands was the star ornament, glowing faintly. Ellie smiled, knowing their adventure had just begun. The glow of the star ornament cast a warm, steady light over Clara's cozy cottage as Ellie and her grandmother sat side by side near the crackling fire. They were safe now, but the star still pulsed faintly, as though alive with a purpose yet unfulfilled. Clara traced her fingers over its delicate carvings, her brow furrowed in thought. "This isn't just an ordinary ornament, Ellie," she murmured. "It's part of the Christmas star. But why it brought us back here, and what it wants us to do, I can't say." Ellie looked up at her grandmother, her determination reignited. "We have to figure it out, Grandma. Mr. Frost said the star's magic is older than anything we can imagine. If it can bring us home, maybe it can do even more. Maybe it can help the whole town, or even the world." Clara smiled softly at Ellie's words, her heart swelling with pride. She had always believed in the power of Christmas to inspire hope and generosity, but this felt bigger than anything she had ever known. Just as she was about to speak, a soft chime echoed through the room, as though a bell had rung far away. The star's light brightened, and then, to Ellie's amazement, it began to rise slowly into the air. It floated to the window, its glow intensifying, and then shot a single beam of golden light into the snowy night. Ellie and Clara hurried to the window, peering out into the darkness. The beam stretched far beyond the town, illuminating the forest, the clock tower, and even the distant hills. As the beam touched each place, the snow sparkled as though sprinkled with stardust, and faint voices began to echo in the distance, voices calling for help. Ellie's eyes widened as she realized the truth. "Grandma, it's showing us where people need help." Clara nodded, her heart racing. "The star's magic. It's about more than finding it for ourselves. It's about spreading its light to others." Without hesitation, Ellie bundled up in her coat and scarf, and Clara grabbed her lantern. They stepped out into the night, following the golden beam as it guided them toward the edge of the town. Their first stop was the clock tower, where they found Mr. Baxter, the elderly clockmaker, struggling to repair a gear that had frozen in the cold. The clock had been silent for hours, leaving the town without its familiar chimes. Clara and Ellie worked quickly, using the star's light to thaw the frozen gear and help Mr. Baxter finish the repair. As the clock chimed midnight, its sound echoed joyfully through the streets, and the star glowed brighter. From there, the star led them to the village orphanage, where the children huddled under thin blankets, their small faces pale from the cold. The orphanage's furnace had broken earlier that day, and the staff had been unable to fix it. Clara and Ellie didn't hesitate. Using tools provided by the staff and the star's warmth, they managed to repair the furnace, filling the building with heat. The children's laughter filled the air as they danced around the warm radiators, and the star's light grew even stronger. The journey continued through the night, with the star leading Clara and Ellie to one person in need after another. They helped a lost traveler find their way home, delivered firewood to a struggling family, and even reunited a young boy with his runaway dog. Each act of kindness seemed to strengthen the star's magic, its light growing ever more radiant. As dawn approached, Clara and Ellie found themselves back in the heart of Silver Bell Hollow, standing before the towering Christmas tree in the town square. The entire town had gathered there, drawn by the star's light, which now shone brighter than ever. It hovered above the tree, its golden glow illuminating every face in the crowd. Mayor Whitaker stepped forward, his expression a mix of awe and gratitude. "Clara, Ellie," he began, his voice shaking slightly. "The star has brought us together tonight, but it's your actions that have reminded us of what Christmas truly means. You've shown us that the magic of this season lies in helping one another." The crowd erupted into cheers, their joy filling the square. Ellie beamed up at her grandmother, who placed a hand on her shoulder. "You were right, my little adventurer," Clara said. "The star's magic isn't about finding it, it's about sharing it." As the sun rose over Silver Bell Hollow, the star began to shimmer and change. Its golden light softened into a warm, silvery glow, and then it slowly descended from the top of the tree, landing gently in Ellie's hands. She looked at it in wonder, feeling its warmth pulse against her palms. The voice of Mr. Frost echoed faintly in her mind. "The Christmas star shines brighter because of you." "Grandma," Ellie whispered, her voice filled with awe, "I think the star chose us." Clara smiled, her eyes misty. "Then let's make sure we keep its light shining." The townsfolk agreed to place the star at the top of the Christmas tree every year, a reminder of the magic and kindness that define their community. Ellie and Clara, now celebrated as the town's heroes, knew that their journey wasn't truly over. The star's magic had woven itself into their hearts, inspiring them to continue spreading its light far beyond Silver Bell Hollow. As the day unfolded, the town celebrated with music, laughter, and a feast that brought everyone together. The Christmas star remained a beacon of hope and unity, its light casting a gentle glow over the snowy streets. For Clara and Ellie, this Christmas was more than an adventure. It was a reminder that even the smallest acts of kindness could illuminate the darkest nights. As the weeks passed, the Christmas star continued to shine atop the tree in Silver Bell Hollow, its gentle glow a beacon of unity and joy. The townspeople marveled at its beauty, but only Clara and Ellie understood the star's true power. They tended to it daily, making sure its light never dimmed. Ellie often wondered if the star would ever guide them on another adventure, but for now, life returned to a quiet normalcy. Clara resumed her baking, Ellie returned to her books and stories, and Silver Bell Hollow thrived under the star's watchful light. One frosty evening, as Ellie and Clara prepared for bed, a strange sound echoed through the night. It was faint at first, a low hum that seemed to ripple through the air. Ellie, wide awake with curiosity, peered out the window. In the distance, near the edge of the forest, she saw flickering lights, blue and cold, unlike the warm glow of the star. "Grandma," Ellie whispered, "something's out there." Clara joined her at the window, her expression turning grave. "Those lights, they don't belong here." She wrapped a shawl around her shoulders. "Stay here, Ellie. I'm going to see what's going on." But Ellie shook her head, her resolve firm. "I'm coming with you. The star chose us, Grandma. We're in this together." Reluctantly, Clara agreed, and the two bundled up before stepping into the cold night. The town was eerily quiet, the usual hum of activity replaced by the unsettling hum that grew louder as they approached the forest. The flickering blue lights danced among the trees, leading them deeper into the woods. Ellie clutched Clara's hand tightly, her breath visible in the frigid air. As they reached the heart of the forest, the lights coalesced into a swirling vortex, and a figure stepped forward, a figure both familiar and fearsome. It was Mr. Frost, but something about him had changed. His icy demeanor was colder, his once crooked smile now sharp and menacing. Behind him, shadows shifted and twisted, their forms barely discernible. "Ah, Clara and Ellie," Mr. Frost drawled, his voice dripping with mockery. "Our little heroes. How quaint." Clara's jaw tightened. "What are you doing here, Frost? You helped us before. Why this now?" Mr. Frost chuckled, the sound sending shivers down Ellie's spine. "Helped? Oh, my dear Clara, I merely played my part. The Christmas star's magic is powerful, yes, but it doesn't belong to you. Its light has burned for centuries, and now, its time is up. It must return to its rightful place, where it can serve a far greater purpose." Ellie stepped forward, her voice trembling but firm. "The star belongs to everyone. It's not just a light, it's hope and kindness. You can't take that away." Frost's smile faltered, his icy eyes narrowing. "You naive little girl. Do you think hope and kindness are enough to protect a world as cruel as this one? The star's magic is wasted here, on this sleepy little town. With its power, I could reshape the world into something far stronger." Clara stepped protectively in front of Ellie, her voice steady despite the fear in her heart. "Power isn't strength, Frost. The star's magic is in its ability to bring people together. You'll destroy that if you take it." Frost raised his hand, and the shadows behind him surged forward, encircling Clara and Ellie. The air grew colder, the ground beneath their feet freezing into jagged ice. "Enough of this sentimentality," he snarled. "The star will be mine, whether you like it or not." Before Clara or Ellie could react, Frost waved his hand, and the shadows shot toward the town. From their vantage point in the woods, they saw the glow of the Christmas star flicker and dim as the shadows reached the square. The light that had once filled Silver Bell Hollow began to fade, replaced by an oppressive darkness. Ellie's heart clenched. "Grandma, we have to stop him." But Clara held her back, her sharp gaze fixed on Frost. "Not yet. He's expecting us to fight him here. We need a plan." Frost turned toward the town, his back to them, confident in his apparent victory. Seizing the opportunity, Clara and Ellie retreated silently into the forest. They returned to the cottage, where Clara rummaged through an old chest in the attic. Inside, she found what she was looking for: a small, intricately carved mirror. "This," Clara explained, holding it up to Ellie, "is the mirror of reflection. It's said to show the truth of one's heart. If we can get Frost to look into it, he might see the consequences of what he's doing." Ellie nodded, her mind racing. "How do we get close enough to use it?" Clara smiled. "Leave that to me. You'll need to protect the star while I distract him." The two made their way back to the square, where Frost stood beneath the now dim tree, the star hovering weakly in his grasp. Shadows swirled around him, feeding off the star's fading light. Clara stepped forward, the mirror hidden in her cloak. "Frost," she called, her voice firm. "If you're so certain of your strength, prove it. Face me." Frost turned, a sneer spreading across his face. "Brave words from an old woman. Very well. Let's see what you've got." As Frost approached Clara, Ellie slipped behind him, moving toward the star. Clara held up the mirror, its surface catching the faint light of the star. Frost's gaze fell on the reflection, and for a moment, his confident facade cracked. In the mirror, he saw a vision of himself alone, his icy world devoid of life or warmth. The shadows that followed him were not allies, but the embodiment of his own loneliness and greed. "No," Frost whispered, his voice trembling. "That's not." "I didn't." The shadows began to retreat, their forms dissipating like mist. Ellie seized the moment, reaching for the star and cradling it in her hands. As soon as she touched it, the light flared, driving back the last of the darkness. Frost stumbled backward, his expression one of anguish and regret. "The star's magic," he murmured. "It's stronger than I thought." Clara stepped forward, her voice gentle. "It's not too late, Frost. You can still choose kindness." Frost hesitated, his icy exterior melting for just a moment. But instead of answering, he turned and disappeared into the forest, leaving only a faint chill in the air. The Christmas star's light returned, brighter than ever, as Ellie placed it back atop the tree. The town's joy and warmth returned with it, stronger for having faced the darkness. As the Christmas star reclaimed its place atop the towering tree in Silver Bell Hollow, its radiant light began to spread, casting a golden glow over the town square. The people of Silver Bell Hollow, who had gathered anxiously after the shadowy attack, stood in awe. The warmth of the star washed over them, filling their hearts with hope and renewing their Christmas spirit. Ellie and Clara stood together at the base of the tree, their faces glowing in the light. But even as the star shone brightly, Clara could feel that its magic had been strained. "Grandma," Ellie said, tugging at Clara's sleeve, "something's still wrong. The star's light. It doesn't feel as strong as before." Clara nodded, her own heart heavy with the realization. The attack by Frost and his shadows had left the star weakened, its energy diminished. Though it still shone, its brilliance lacked the vibrancy it had once had. "You're right, Ellie," Clara said. "The star's magic comes from the kindness and unity of the people. We need to help it heal by showing the true spirit of Christmas." Ellie's eyes lit up with determination. "Then let's show the whole town how to help." She ran to the mayor, who had been watching from the sidelines, and tugged at his coat. "Mayor Whitaker, we need to bring everyone together. The star's light depends on all of us." The mayor, a portly man with a booming voice and a heart as big as his laugh, looked down at Ellie with admiration. "You're absolutely right, young lady," he said. Turning to the crowd, he raised his arms and called out, "People of Silverbell Hollow, tonight, we've seen the power of the Christmas star and the courage of Clara and Ellie. But now it's our turn. The star needs us, all of us, to restore its light. Let's show it what this town is made of." The crowd erupted into cheers, their voices filled with determination. Groups of people quickly sprang into action, gathering supplies for a grand celebration. Shops opened their doors to share food and drinks. Families brought blankets and decorations, and musicians tuned their instruments for an impromptu concert in the square. Ellie and Clara worked tirelessly alongside their neighbors, baking trays of gingerbread cookies and handing them out to children who giggled and chattered with excitement. As the preparations unfolded, Ellie noticed something remarkable. The star's light seemed to pulse faintly in time with the laughter and joy spreading through the square. She turned to Clara, her eyes wide with realization. "Grandma, look. It's working." Clara smiled, her heart swelling with pride. "That's the magic of Christmas, Ellie. When people come together, there's no limit to what they can do." The town square was soon transformed into a dazzling wonderland. Lanterns hung from every tree branch, casting warm light over the festivities. Tables were laden with steaming bowls of soup, roasted chestnuts, and Clara's famous gingerbread cookies. Children played in the snow, their laughter echoing through the night, while carolers sang familiar tunes, their harmonies filling the air. The musicians began to play a lively tune, and townsfolk young and old joined hands to dance in a circle around the tree. In the midst of the celebration, Ellie noticed something glowing faintly near the edge of the square. She excused herself from a group of children and followed the light, her curiosity piqued. To her surprise, she found Mr. Frost standing in the shadows, his icy demeanor softened. He watched the festivities from afar, his expression a mix of longing and regret. "Mr. Frost," Ellie called softly, stepping closer. He looked up, startled, his icy blue eyes meeting hers. "Why are you here?" she asked. Frost hesitated, his voice quieter than she expected. "I wanted to see if you'd done it," he admitted. "If you could bring the star's light back." He gestured toward the glowing Christmas star, his voice tinged with awe. "It's beautiful. More beautiful than I remembered." Ellie stepped closer, her gaze steady. "You don't have to watch from the shadows. You can join us." Frost shook his head, his expression conflicted. "After what I've done, I don't deserve to stand among them." Ellie tilted her head, her tone gentle but firm. "Christmas isn't about what you deserve. It's about forgiveness and second chances. You helped us once before. You can help us again." Frost stared at her for a long moment, his icy exterior beginning to thaw. Finally, he nodded. Perhaps I can." Ellie extended her hand, and Frost hesitated before taking it. Together, they returned to the square, where Clara greeted Frost with a warm smile. "Welcome back, Frost," she said kindly. We've got plenty of work to do." With Frost's help, the festivities reached new heights. He used his icy magic to create intricate snow sculptures that delighted the children, and his deep, resonant voice joined the carolers, adding a hauntingly beautiful harmony to their songs. For the first time in years, he felt truly connected to others, and the warmth of their kindness began to melt the cold around his heart. As the clock struck midnight, the townsfolk gathered around the tree, their faces aglow with anticipation. Ellie and Clara stood hand in hand, their hearts full of hope. The Christmas star pulsed once, then twice, its light growing stronger with each passing moment. Finally, it erupted in a brilliant burst of golden light, illuminating the entire town and the forest beyond. The people cheered, their joy echoing into the night. Ellie looked up at the star, tears of happiness streaming down her face. "We did it, Grandma," she whispered. "The star is whole again." Clara knelt beside her, pulling her into a warm embrace. "No, Ellie," she said softly. "You did it. Your courage and kindness brought us all together." As the celebration continued late into the night, Ellie and Clara felt a deep sense of fulfillment. The star's light, now stronger than ever, would continue to guide Silver Bell Hollow, a symbol of the magic that could be found when people united in love and generosity. And as for Mr. Frost, he remained in the town, no longer a shadowy figure on the outskirts. Instead, he became a part of the community, using his magic to bring wonder and beauty to Silver Bell Hollow. And though he never admitted it aloud, he often found himself looking up at the Christmas star, grateful for the second chance it had given him. The story of the Christmas star became a legend in Silver Bell Hollow, passed down from generation to generation. But for Clara, Ellie, and the people of the town, it wasn't just a story. It was a reminder of the power of hope, kindness, and the enduring magic of Christmas.